Welcome, everybody. You are a wonderfully prompt group of attendees so far, which puts such a smile on my face. Go ahead and let me know where you're at in the world, your name, where you are. I recognize some familiar names and some new names, which is wonderful. So how's everyone's morning going? And as soon as I can get us to stream live on Facebook, we will go ahead and get started. We've got a great group and I am excited to dig in. Okay, let me start my video here. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. I'm gonna go back over here and present. And I am so excited to have you all here today. It is Sponsorship Strategies 101. We are gonna talk all things event sponsors today, which has been a topic I have been seeing a ton of conversations on in Facebook with my clients, with my peers. It is really a hot topic right now. You know, it's always a challenge for us as small and startup nonprofits to secure event sponsors, and more so with COVID, right? That's sort of the name of 2020. Everything's just a bit harder. So let's walk through it. A little bit about me and how we're going to have the call today. My name is Catherine, or Kat, and I'm the founder of Giant Squid Group, and I work with nonprofits, mostly with under $1 million budgets. I'm a nonprofit growth coach for small and startup nonprofits, and Giant Squid Group does one-on-one coaching, group coaching, grant writing, strategic planning, really you name it. We are thrilled to work with clients all over the country, although our consultants are here in Austin and in Chicago. I have 10-ish years of fundraising experience. I started fundraising right out of college and have thrown everything from little teeny intimate gatherings to a gala that raised over $1 million, which was certainly fun. I started party planning when I was in kindergarten, and as my kindergarten teacher will tell you, terrorized everyone with my insistence that we have elaborate mock weddings pretty much every day, and sadly did not get any sponsors for those, but a girl can hope. So my goal today is to move through this fairly quickly, to leave lots of time for questions, for conversation, for examples of what you're doing or anything that's really burning on your mind. There's a few slides throughout the deck where I'll pause and ask questions, so please throw a question in the question box or the chat box, raise your hand, or feel free to unmute and just speak up. I really want this to be interactive and of great value for you. At the end of today, I'll share a special option for you guys. We're launching our crash course today. And I know we have at least one of our fall cohort in the crash course on the call today. This is a little bit of a taste test, taste test. So if this is fun for you, I hope you'll check out the crash course so we can do this every week for 6 weeks. So what we're going to talk about today when it comes to sponsorships is an overview of sponsorship best practices. If you are brand new to this or you have been finding it challenging to secure sponsors, we'll talk about the ins and outs briefly. how you can create a really great sponsorship deck, what should go in it, what shouldn't go in it, what mistakes you might be making, and some of the best practices I like to use when creating those sponsorship decks, how to find the right sponsors for your specific organization, and then, as I said, lots of time for questions. I'm going to make sure I have the Q&A handy as well. So like I said, please feel free to ask as many questions as you can think of. So sponsorship 101, what is an event sponsorship? First, it's really important if you are new to this to understand that there's a difference between sponsorships and grants. And in this particular webinar, and when I talk about sponsorships, I am talking about event sponsorships, not a general investment from a business or a corporation. I've heard them used interchangeably. You certainly might use them interchangeably, but I think that can lead to some confusion because the ways that we would go after a grant or a corporate investment that's purely philanthropic and a sponsorship is different. And often if you're looking at a big company, they might even come from different pots of money. Say their corporate social responsibility department gives grants, but their marketing department gives sponsorships. So that clarity is always a really helpful place to start. The next most important thing is get creative. All through this, you're going to talk about hearing me get creative. There is no one size fits all way to secure sponsors. When you ask someone for their sponsorship deck, I can promise you it's probably going to be fairly used to you. The format might look great and you might get some great ideas for how they've worded things, but you need to really tap into your brand, who you are as an organization, who you are as an event planner, who you are as a person, and make sure that your sponsorship is really mission aligned with who you are. Don't stress the deck. Like I said, it doesn't matter what your deck looks like. You could slide a postcard across the table to a sponsor, and if you have a really great value proposition for them, a mission aligned event, and a strong brand, that is going to be so much more important. Of course, we always want our work to look professional and be engaging, but I would rather you have a post-it note with some really great words on it than a 10-page sponsorship deck that you spent a ton of time on. And lastly, and perhaps most critically, is your relationships rule. You are much more likely to get money from a local business or vendor than a large corporation that you don't know. And now let's dive into all of these in a little more detail. Too far. So a little bit more about what I said about the difference between event sponsorships and some of the other forms of charitable funding that businesses and corporations might have. A donation or a grant is going to be a tax-free charitable contribution, 100%, they just give you money. So that would be if you went to a local company and they had a grant program or they just directly invested in your programs with nothing in return. I've heard this called sponsorships before, and that's why I wanted to take a moment to clarify it. A partnership, again, is something different. It's an established contractual partnership agreement that you would have with very, very tangible goals and outputs. So that's not what we're talking about either. We are talking about sponsorships. Shooting stars everywhere. Sponsorship is a form of marketing. It's the company receives recognition and benefits. They are tangible benefits. And often, we will get into that, is tickets to your event, logo recognition, and all the other things. But it is definitely a marketing tool for your companies and a revenue stream for you as an organization. So how do we create those compelling sponsor benefits? And here's where it gets really fun. I've been doing this for 10 years, and I can tell you with certainty that logo placements and shout outs on your Facebook page and in your newsletter really don't cut it anymore. That tends to be our go-to, particularly as small and startup nonprofits, if we don't feel like we have a ton to offer, or we're perhaps feeling a little bit insecure about really adding value. But I have heard from so many funders that honestly, they just don't care. And I think it's also an opportunity to be really realistic and say, if you are a smaller nonprofit with a Facebook following of even a few thousand people, is that really going to convert customers for your business partners? If you can, fantastic, do it. But for most of us, that's not enough. I know as a small company, you know, when I have my logo put on something for one of my clients, I know that I'm not going to get clients on it. I'm doing it because I care about them. So while that recognition is important and why you absolutely want to put your sponsors' logos everywhere, don't think that that's going to be the draw. What you really do need to do is find ways to align their mission with your mission and find those areas of overlap. So when we're talking about creating sponsorship benefits, I really like to dig deep and think about what are the one-of-a-kind meaningful opportunities that a sponsor can't just roll in and buy from you typically, and what's going to be real marketing for them. What are the benefits and perks that they actually want? So this is an area where I think looking at the business world and looking at the way some of the big brands activate their brand is a fantastic way to get creative. So if you're looking for exciting opportunities, I would look at brand activation. That's the word the business world uses. Events like South by Southwest, down here in Austin, that's our big event, got canceled this year. They have the most bizarre, innovative brand activation opportunities. And of course, these are put together by, multi-million-dollar agencies, but there's nothing stopping you from getting really creative with how you can showcase a company's brand. And also coming back to your mission, what are the things that you do that no one else does that a company would want to be part of? So an example of that is one of our nonprofit partners down here in Austin, right outside of Austin, is a small equine therapy organization. And last year they had their first ever fundraising event in history. And so there was no baseline for securing sponsors. I imagine a lot of you are in their shoes. How do we throw a first or second or fifth event and actually get sponsors when we can't just go back to the folks we've talked to before? So really critically for them, they needed to build trust with sponsors, and for them that involved highlighting their programs. They talked to a lot of their local business partners and leaders and asked, what do you want? That included talking to folks on their board who had connections to the Austin community, who were managers and leaders themselves, talking to their vendors, and really anyone else that would sit still long enough. And these were not in-depth, scary, conversations. These were texting a board member and saying, hey, if we offered this sponsorship, would your company be interested? And getting, oh my gosh, absolutely, or I don't really think so. So having an understanding of what was in it for the sponsors was a really great first step. And after that, they were able to craft a fantastic sponsor benefit opportunity that included VIP networking prior to the event that was almost no cost. We just got there an hour early. And all of the sponsors, $2,500 and up, had a private team building retreat on site. That's not something that Help typically offers. It's not something you can buy, but it is something that we new business leaders in Austin were always looking to do. We have a ton of small startups down here, and getting out, slightly outside of the city to do equine-led team building was truly priceless. So a $2,500 buy-in for that, plus all of the logo recognition, plus the VIP marketing, so on, was incredibly helpful. And they ended up raising about $14,000 in sponsors just from that first year. So that was super exciting. So a few other ways that you can really talk about real partner engagement, and we will get into some Q&A here in a moment, so don't start taking notes and thinking, is what do you have on site? If you have any opportunity for site visits, for days of service, for volunteer opportunities, anything to get physically involved, that is going to add a lot of value to your potential sponsors. If they have a team, they need to do team building retreats. If they have any sort of corporate social responsibility or volunteer days, working with them to do that in a way that is a little bit more elevated than normal is a huge sell. I am on the board of the Austin Diaper Bank down here, and while we do volunteer days all the time, they can be, they're always in the middle of the day. They have people from all over, and so any company can come and do a volunteer day. But if we were really going to think about a day of service specifically for a sponsor, it might include wine and cheese or sandwiches or something, maybe some beer from a local brewery down the road. It would probably include some time with some other board members, some networking. So just elevating it, because we already have diapers and we already have volunteer opportunities. Thinking about the brand placement, I put social media takeovers twice. That's how fun I thought it was. Thinking about the branding, the logo placement, all of that, get creative here as well. If you don't think that putting a sponsor logo on your website is going to be enough of a draw, which we said it is not, what can you do for them? If they're a small business, can you have them post on your Instagram for an hour? Can you interview them in a long form way with a bunch of photos? Could you go to their company and live stream about the event from them? What are the real opportunities for two-way engagement? The same with the logo inclusion on the swag or any collateral is if you are going to be having any hands-on opportunities at your event, think about how you can highlight your sponsors there. And then getting really fun, and what I really think is where sponsors are going to want to see things is interactive event opportunities, something like a photo booth sponsorship, something like, I know we have someone on the call, Lauren, I'm going to put you on the spot, is doing a fantastic event where in the future we've talked about naming obstacles for this obstacle course after sponsors, right? Something that's really memorable. There's so many different things you could do. So for instance, with the Austin Diaper Bank, could it be a giant diaper tower? I don't know, you know, with help here working with the horses, could it be that, you know, you're naming one of the horse stables after that sponsor? You know, really what's worth it to the sponsor. Lastly, you know, keynote opportunities can also be really appealing for major sponsors. Can your sponsor come up on stage and talk for a minute or present? I have seen that done incredibly well. I was actually at an event where their keynote sponsor got up and talked, and I was like hanging off her every word because she was a fantastic, very mission-aligned sponsor. And then lastly, some sort of case study highlight in your newsletter, your social media, so on and so forth. Again, go back to what the bigger companies are doing and see what works for them. I am a particular fan, for those of you who are podcast fans, of the podcast Work Life with Adam Grant. And he has a fantastic way of putting his advertising into those podcasts where instead of the usual, you know, every 10 minutes interrupted by an ad for, it's always like Squarespace or Blue Apron or something, right? It's always Madison Reed now in the podcast I'm listening to. He has a longer 5-minute advertisement that's a mini case study about an employer, and it reads as if it's part of the podcast. Getting creative that way and really putting on your best branding hat will help so much coming up with meaningful sponsor benefits. So let's take a pause, and I'm gonna open it up for questions here. What is one thing that your organization can offer potential sponsors that no one else has? Raise your hand or leave a comment or a question, and I'd love to hear what ideas you have. Oops. And if you're going, Catherine, I haven't put on makeup, leave me alone, that's okay. Yes, so Lauren says unique audience. Lauren works, her nonprofit is Lyme Warrior, so they have a unfortunately fairly captive audience that's always going to be there. Fantastic. Monica, mini horses to visit sponsor businesses. Yes, for sure. I mean, when you have mini horses, it's like a shoe-in, right? We have help. They'll paint their mini horse. That's really cute. Love the mini horses. And so for Lauren, and we take them inside the buildings and they visit the workers. That is so fun. And you know what, Monica, like I'd pay for that. You know, if you said, I'll bring a mini horse over to entertain your toddler in COVID, I'd be like, how much? And you say, oh, you have to sponsor my event. That's the only way you can do this. Huge value prop. So I love that creative thinking. And of course, if we all had mini horses, life would be more fun. Fundraising would be a lot easier. So for those of us who don't have mini horses, you have to think of what's the mini horse of your organization. You know, I know there's some folks on the call that don't do the same kind of direct service in that way, that are working in the mental health field or things like that. So the idea is what can you add to the conversation that's not already there? Is it yourself? Is it speaking opportunities? Is it lunch and learns? It's anything you can do to really further your brand is going to appeal to sponsors. Love that. And Monica, please email me a picture of your mini horse because we're obsessed with horses. I have a 3-year-old daughter. We're big into horses. So moving on to the pitch deck, the number one thing everyone thinks is going to solve their sponsorship woes. And like I said, doesn't hugely matter. Don't stress the deck. Relationships are way more important than how your deck looks. You need to focus on what's in it for them. The most beautiful deck in the world, if it just says we're going to put your logo on our website, will not get you anywhere. Further, keep it short and sweet. I have done events where the marketing department, back when I worked in organizations big enough to have a marketing department, had like 10-page decks with all of these grids and photos. No one cares. We all have the attention span of, you know, a short attention span of a goldfish. Keep it short, keep it sweet. And the other thing is the format doesn't matter. If you hop online and you start searching for sponsorship decks, you're going to find everything under the sun. Some of them are going to be really long. You're going to see those traditional grids with all the checkboxes. It doesn't matter what it looks like. Just make it professional, polished, and short. What goes in your sponsorship deck, however, can help you really further that message of what's in it for you. And I always like to make sure that every sponsor conversation passes that test, what's in it for them. The first thing is know who you're going to ask. You will probably end up customizing your sponsorship deck or the letters that go along with it. So before you start writing, get your sponsor prospect pipeline in shape, identify who's going to make the asks, what connections you have, and by when. And I'll be sending out an email after today with a sponsorship prospect pipeline that you can use if you don't have one. It's just a simple Google sheet, but it's something that served me well. Identify your sponsor perks. You've already done that. We've got our mini horses, we've got our audience, and we know what we can add value to our sponsors. And then say what's in it very, very clearly. So the sponsor perks are one thing, but the second thing you can do is really that statement of need. The same way you might write a grant application or talk to a donor, why should your corporate partners care? And when we're talking about sponsorships, you can take it a step further. And of course, they care about your mission, right? Of course, when Lauren is talking to someone about Lyme patients, she's finding companies that are aligned, that they care about this chronic illness. But she might also want to take it a step further and think about what is their incentive to reach the Lyme community? Is this a community that is going to support their business? Is this a community that has really good visibility in some areas? Making sure that you are tapping into similarly like-minded companies is really going to help. For instance, I'm trying to think, the Austin Diaper Bank. You know, we go after sponsors that are aligned with families because we know that most of our donors and most of our board members are people like me. You know, we have young children, we're working parents, we care really deeply about supporting our family and our friends, and the thought of our constituents being strapped for diapers is heartbreaking. So we go after diaper companies, we go after companies that work with children, we go after companies that target parents because there's a strong mission alignment. And then you want to make it easy for the sponsors. For the 17th time, I'm going to say you don't need a 10-page deck. A short 1 or 2 page PDF is great. I have done a big postcard, a landing page. So if you can say, you know, here's some sponsor benefits, here's a picture, here's the value prop, go to our website, is going to be so much better than a long brochure because most of us are reading these on our phones or it's getting forwarded to a marketing team. So we really want to keep our end user, which is our sponsor, in mind as we're creating these. What you should include in a sponsorship deck is largely up to you, but of course you need your name, your event, date, time, location, other relevant details, because of course you're inviting your sponsors to the event, probably giving them free tickets, that's really standard. Highlight what your event is going to accomplish. So is this just a party because you like having parties? Probably not. I like having a good party, but that's not why we're doing this. What is the value to your community? What is the value to those whom you serve? And what is the value to the sponsors? So that's when you can get really explicit. You know, we are throwing this event to help the Austin Diaper Bank because we want to raise $10,000 and distribute another 1 million diapers. The value to you is that you are going to have access to an activated group of parents, of key decision makers, of business people, whatever it is that you're talking about, spell it out for the sponsors. Don't make them guess. And then what are the levels, if you have levels, and how do they pay? No one's going to send you a check. Like, let's be real honest. I haven't seen my checkbook in a year. I think I only got it when we were buying our house. No one has checks. They're going to do it online. So make it easy, have a quick landing page, and also don't be wed to the idea of the sponsor levels. I have them listed here. You can see what Help did. They were very happy to share their deck, but you could just say, all sponsors get this and premium sponsors get this, and we'll create a custom package for you. So again, creativity. When Help set theirs, it was 4 pages. They probably could have even lost the 3rd page, changing lives one hoofbeat at a time, and been fine, because that middle page says, here's who we are, here's what we're doing, here's what you get. Last page says, here's how you pay. So if you want to have a longer deck, by all means do it, but don't feel like you have to have it in order to be successful. If you're not sure logistically where to start, what I always recommend is Canva is great, canva.com. I'm sure most of you are on it. It is free for nonprofits, so don't forget that. If you have your 501c3, you can get free Canva Pro, which I highly recommend. And if you're feeling like you need a little help, one of the reasons that I do like Canva for the small nonprofit like all of us is you could hire a designer to help you create that initial template at low cost and then reuse it for your Facebook post, for all of these other things. So it's flexible, it's low cost, and you can create some really beautiful collateral. Shy away from stock images. Try to use as many real images as you can. If you want to process payments and create a little landing page and you're feeling like the tech you have doesn't cut it, I am a big fan of Give Lively. It's, again, free, and we used it with help. I've used it with several other organizations to create these very simple landing pages for sponsors to pay, and it's a fantastic end user experience for the sponsors. And then create a landing page on your website for sponsor updates, logos, so on and so forth. It just creates that easy dialogue and keeps people all on the same page. So what questions or ideas around your sponsorship deck do you have? What fears, what is keeping you up at night? Hopefully not this. Or what sponsorship decks have you done or seen in the past that you've really loved? I'm going to give us a few more minutes to think about it and see if anyone has any ideas. Okay, and in the follow-up email after today, you will get a, thank you, Lauren, love the unique ideas, yes. I'm gonna come to Lauren's farm for a sponsorship that I've just created for myself. You will get a sponsorship deck template that is a Canva template that hopefully will show you how to just sort of plug and play. So lastly, and most importantly, fundraising does not happen in an echo chamber. And for those of you who have worked with me in the past or been on any of Giant Squid Group's other free programs, you know I will beat you over the head with this. Relationships matter. Relationships are the #1 factor in success, particularly when it comes to sponsorships. And I cannot state that enough. If you want to land sponsors, and this is that key differentiator that we all have that you can go out and do today, you need to leverage your network. Again, focus on that real engagement. It's in here twice because it's that important. You need to have real conversations with your sponsors and consider your audience and their connection to your mission. So to brainstorm that a little bit and to continue to use Help as an example, because I think like most of us, they are a very small nonprofit. When we started to think about our audiences and their connection to the Help mission in Austin, it took some creativity and it took some shifting of what we initially thought. Austin is a decent sized city with a lot of businesses. However, where Help is and where I live, we're on the outskirts of the city in a small town called Pflugerville. So we're not Austin. And it feels like we're not Austin. And so there can be this tension of feeling forgotten by some of the nonprofits up here. We're sort of in between cities. And so when we started thinking about who the Help board could leverage, who cared about Help, we thought about the Pflugerville businesses, the local businesses here, because we do have this feeling of it being a small town. We also started to think about who liked horses and who would want to invest in them. And we also thought about their other constituency, which is the riders that are neurologically or physically disabled and ride the horses. So creating these larger buckets of small businesses that wanted to invest in Central Texas, of horse lovers who really appreciated our mission, and of folks who wanted to support the mental health and physical health of our riders, we were able to create these big buckets and then clearly connect our ask to their work. Having an internal champion is going to be the best way to do this and leverage those relationships. So you can cold call, and cold calling certainly works, but you can make a lot of phone calls and get no's, and you can send a lot of emails and get no's. What's going to be much more successful is working your 6 degrees of separation to a company, getting that in and sending a personal email to them. The relationship mapping to get there can be really, really fun, and it can be challenging, but I would definitely encourage you to fill out that sponsor prospect pipeline with companies that you have an in with, whether it's that you get your haircut there or your kid goes to karate there or whatever, and think about if they might be the best fit. The blanket cold emails that sponsors get will probably not be read, and they can honestly be a bit of a turnoff. I have gotten them where it just feels so forced, like they didn't do any homework. You know, my name might be spelled wrong. It does not paint the best picture of those nonprofits, and it shows that they're really not looking at their relationships and the value they're adding to the community. They're just throwing spaghetti at a wall and see what sticks. So when you're thinking about leveraging those relationships, first, find your audience. Create that sponsor prospect pipeline with people that are near and dear to you. Make sure your sponsors are mission aligned. Make sure, you know, for someone like we talked about, Lauren working with Lyme patients, who has a connection to the Lyme community. If Monica's working with mini horses, you know, who cares about those mini horses and is going to be connected to that mission. Make sure that you have that audience. Then identify the sponsor benefits, which we talked about, right? And with something like the equine assisted therapy that helped us, we had those benefits, again, be very specific. Equine assisted therapy retreats. The silent auction was all focused on the horses. So having it be very, very mission focused actually gave us more freedom to really more powerfully go after those sponsors. And then, use your inner circle. Your board needs to help. And if all of you cringed a little bit and said, oh, they're not going to do it, you're not alone. That's okay. We'll get there. Your board needs to help. They should be out there soliciting. They should be out there making introductions, because they are coming to these companies as peers, as customers. They have a different position of power from which to leverage their relationships, and that's critical. Volunteers, they make fantastic internal champions. If you have a volunteer that works at a local company and can get you in the door, you are going to be so much more successful than going in blind. The same with longtime donors. If you have someone who's been really invested in your work, even giving $5 a month for the last 10 years, give them a call, shoot them an email and say, hey, I would really love to have a sponsorship from so-and-so. Can you help me? The worst they're going to say is no. They're not going to, never talk to you again. Once you have your list and you have your champions, customize your outreach. No mass mailings. Don't do it. Don't just send a million blind emails. For the love of God, don't BCC everyone in email. You want to have a custom cover letter. You want to be making phone calls. You want this to feel personal, because you are asking people to invest significantly in your work. And be prepared to follow up. And I think this is where most of us sort of shy away, and then we don't get to pop that champagne cork. You're probably going to need to send a few emails, 2, 3, 4, few phone calls. It's not rude. I mean, it's rude if you're stalking someone. Don't stalk someone. But be persistent and know that it might take a few emails to get either a no or a yes, and that's okay. When you put your network to work, think about all of the different ways that you can leverage those around you. First, starting with that inner circle of your board. Where do they work? That's going to be the lowest hanging fruit, right? Where do they work? Where do their spouses work? Running my own company, I do not have a matching gifts program. You might find that shocking, but my husband works for a Fortune 500 company, and they do. And so when I make my gifts, if we make gifts of any significant size, he makes them, and he has his company match them 50%. I always tell, the organizations with which I work to expect that, and we work on that. I've also been able to leverage friends who work at big companies. Apple has a big presence here, so on and so forth, to get those matching gifts. And then who are their peers and who are their connections? Like I said, my husband works for a Fortune 500 company, but I also have friends that work for tech startups, so on and so forth, and they know people I don't. So as a board member, my first step would be hitting up my close friends and saying, who can help me get sponsorships? And having your board involved in that way is going to be a key differentiator. It might not be this year. We might need to do some board engagement work, and that's okay, but that should be your big picture vision. Vendors and partners are fantastic sponsors. If you are investing money in your internet service provider, they can be tricky. your landlord, your printer, whoever you think of, ask them for money. I have seen some of the highest success rates coming from vendors, and at the very least, they'll usually do something in kind. So definitely make a list of everyone that you've given money to, everyone you have a contact with, and I'd ask them for, I don't know, 10%. So if you're spending $10,000 a year on a consultant or something, ask them for $1,000 and see what they say. Similarly with volunteers, get those volunteers to tell you where they work. If they run their own businesses, if their grandparents run their own businesses, I don't care, but get creative and start asking them to help you become champions. And then local businesses, like we said, are often going to be much more inclined to invest than large companies. They are going to have a lot of the same customer base as you do. They're going to see the benefit to your community that you have every day, and they are going to be the most receptive to those sponsorship perks you've come up with, because they don't necessarily have the big, community engagement program. So something like a day of service for your small mom and pop shop is going to be much more of a draw than for a Fortune 500 company. To paint a picture, for me, I have 3 women on my team, and over Christmas we were going to go axe throwing. That was going to be our retreat. We had got sick and it got canceled, but that was going to be our retreat because there's 3 of us. My husband, Fortune 500 company, very different. So if someone came to me and said, we can give you a unique benefit for your small business, I would be able to make that decision quickly. I would be able to get my, not checkbook, my credit card out that day, and be very excited about being able to add that value to my company versus, my husband would not even know who to ask. There's so many people that he works with. So think about other ways you can put your network to work, but definitely start with the folks you know, the companies that you work with every day, your board, and your volunteers. So relationships matter. What questions or ideas do we have here? And if you can all drop one name, who is someone that you would want to reach out to start thinking about sponsorships for your next event? Is there a company? Is there a board member? Who's going to be your first call? You're all saying, I'm not picking up the phone. It's 2020. We're millennials. We don't do that. Okay. A pediatrician. Love it. Oh, yes. So pediatrician, right? Taryn works in the mental health, perinatal mental health. So someone who also works with young mothers. Sneaker store. I love that. So many great ideas here. And I think, it can be scary to think you're going to pick up the phone. And I promise you, the worst thing people are going to say is it's not the right time. No one is going to, disown you from their cause. So the great thing about this is once you start getting your sponsors, it's much easier to retain them for next year. Same with fundraising across the board. Your sponsors for your 2021 and 2022 event, I don't know what year it is, start now. Every conversation you have today for the rest of this year into Q1 of next year will help you with your future sponsorships, because you are showing your brand, you're showing your authenticity, you're showing your professionalism. So even if they say no, you are starting that connection, and you can absolutely cultivate folks that say not right now, or that even ignore you. Just keep up. You should steward these donors all year round, and very, very critically, make sure you have a thank you plan for each sponsor. Far too often I see people pounding the pavement to get sponsors, working so hard to secure a few $1,000s in sponsorships. The event's over and we're so exhausted we forget to say thank you. And those sponsors don't know how the event went, they don't know if they were valued, and they never hear from us again until we want to ask them for more money, which is just not a great way to fundraise. And they're much more likely to say no because they've got a bit of a bad taste in their mouth. So the day after your event, the day after your event, take a break, take a bath, go get a massage. Second day after your event, you should be getting on the phone with those sponsors, or sending thank you notes, or sending them photos you took of the event. So have a thank you plan, which could be simple as a custom letter, or could be a multi-step process to engage them all year long, but make sure you say thank you. And just as critically, make sure they get their sponsorship benefits, or at least that you reach out to them about it. I have also seen that happen. It gets so chaotic leading up to an event, and afterwards there's no way to track which sponsors got what. If you said you were going to include their name and a link to their company in a follow-up digest, make sure the email goes out and make sure they know about it. If they were supposed to get some sort of swag or some sort of placement on your website, do it and follow up, because that is going to leave an equally bad taste in their mouth. And this seems obvious, but having done more fundraising and events than I can remember, I know the day after the event, my feet hurt so dang much. I just want to sleep and I don't want to think about anything. So if I don't have a plan for how I'm going to go through the next few weeks, this is very, very easy to forget. So next steps for your amazing sponsorships, and I cannot wait to hear about all the events you're thinking about doing or currently planning, is check your email this afternoon and I will send out a link to the landing page on my website with a sponsorship tracker, a deck template, a checklist, a copy of these slides, and a copy of the recording from today. And I'm also sending out an exclusive discount on our crash course, which launched September 9th, and there's 5 seats left. So I would love for each and every one of you to join that. Like I said, it's a 6-week program. We'll meet Wednesdays from 11 to 12:30 CST for 5 weeks, and then you'd have an exclusive coaching session with me. And it's going to be a 6-week crash course to create your own fundraising plan using objectives and key results. And we'll go through individual donors, grants, board development, events, goal setting, and then putting it all together. It's going to be so freaking fun. I'm so excited. Lastly, it's time for you all to shine. So I'm seeing mini horses, I'm seeing sneaker stores, I'm seeing pediatricians. What questions, ideas, insights, and wisdom do you have to share? We've actually got 20 minutes left. I said I would go fast and I did. So I'm here to chat for the next few minutes and would love to hear from all of you. If you're feeling brave, you can raise your hand. Reporting back to your sponsors, how often would you recommend? That is a really great question, Lauren. I think it depends on the rest of your communication, donor communications. I would certainly report back to them shortly after the event, letting them know how it went, particularly if in your sponsorship packet you say any quantitative data. If you say you're expecting, 100 people and you get 200 people there, you'd want to share that with your sponsors. You'd want to share how much money you raised, particularly if it's good news, and just a little bit about the event. And then maybe a quarterly or mid-year check-in with them, just shooting them a quick email or a thank you card or an impact report. And then so that when they hear from you for the renewal sponsorship, they've had at least 2 or 3 meaningful touch points. You could add them to your newsletter, although they might really not be your target market. I am personally a huge fan of when you're going to add someone to your newsletter, ask them if they actually want to be on it. And that could be a touch point in itself to say, we send out a monthly newsletter with spotlights. Please click here to subscribe. Otherwise, I'll send you our annual report in 6 months. It shows that you've got your shit together, for lack of a better word. And it also shows that you really respect their time. So I'd say at least 2 or 3 touch points to answer your question, Lauren, but they can be pretty diverse. Wonderful question. Monica says our sponsor letter or deck is boring, just a letter thinking of including a photo of one of our clients in action. Okay, Monica, didn't you say you're the one with the mini horses? Girl, let's put that on a mini horse. I just want all mini horses all the time. Equine assisted therapy, love it. So yeah, if your sponsor letter is boring, you can jazz it up. And again, keep in mind, like we said, about the content doesn't matter as much, but if the letter is boring to read, it's going to be harder for people to actually engage with. So I love the idea of one of your clients in action. Equine therapy in particular, and I'd love to chat further, Monica, you have the draw of both the horses and the riders appealing to 2 very different audiences. And so absolutely bring that to life. And if you don't want to do a big deck, you could have a short letter or a short email and then direct them to a landing page that has tons of pictures, testimonials, particularly with something that can pull on the heartstrings like equine therapy, where you've got the horses and you've got the riders, and they're all so dang cute. Having testimonials about the impact of your work on your landing page can really liven it up and bring to life why a sponsor would want to engage. So definitely photos for sure. Photos and quotes, two of my favorite tools in fundraising. Michael, what do I suggest that you offer potential sponsors? Michael, what is your organization? What do you do? And while you're adding that, I think it's very subjective. So to go back to the start of the conversation, of course, there are the usual suspects, the brand recognition, their logos on everything at the event, their logos on t-shirts and so on and so forth. But that only goes so far. You really need to think about what is in it for them. So if it's a day of service to come and, if you're a horse, equine therapy, cleaning out stalls. I mean, honestly, if you sit at a desk all day, mucking stalls is a relief. If it's coming and feeding the horses, that's a relief. If you don't have that opportunity to be on site, it could be lunch. You go and have a lunch and learn for their folks. You do, just something creative. So, Michael, happy to brainstorm with you further if you want to shoot me an email. But yeah, it's really, you got to get creative. And I would talk to your staff and see if you have a staff. If you're a one-woman shop or one-man shop, then talk to yourself. What do they think is different about your work and worth sharing with sponsors? What is different about the clients with whom you work? And could you share that to sponsors that way? So definitely get creative. Great question, Michael. Thank you for asking. Okay, well, if everyone has shared some wonderful questions and ideas, thank you. Ending early is always my favorite thing. Right? We all get an unexpected 13 minutes in our day. I am so excited I got to spend this morning with you all. This was really, really fun. Like I said, I'll be sending out a follow-up email shortly, so please feel free to respond back to that email. It will come right to me with any questions. And I certainly hope I get to see all of your names and hopefully faces soon on some of our future programming. I will stay on for about another 5 minutes. I'm going to stop the share and stop streaming and turn off my video, but I will be here if someone wants to ask any questions. And I look forward to talking to you all soon. Have a great day, everyone.